in the electronics industry. Marie volunteers as a youth group minister coordinator at her church. And then most relevant for this evening, she also is a native of Trinidad and Tobago, which is where the setting for our film this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Marie.
Welcome, welcome everyone, and happy Earth Day, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to celebrate Earth Day, as well as joining us for this two-part celebration. We hope that you do leave here inspired and energized to make a difference in our community. My name is shared as Marie Thompson, and I'm a member of the IPC board. I'm also a proud immigrant from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Growing up in Trinidad, my grandfather had a fruit farm, and we lived across the street from him. And there were also pig farms and goat farms and cow farms all around us. And so, you know, it was pretty much village life. And these childhood memories I cherish because, you know, outside of COVID, when I was able to go back to Trinidad, and I went back quite frequently, there's quite a little bit of sadness there, because much of those lands that where I grew up around have been sold and transformed into what you see here in the United States of subdivisions and suburbs, all except for my grandfather's little plot of land, which my elderly uncle who now lives, and we are, as a family, are trying to figure out what we can do to keep it there. With that said, and you'll see in the film here, emerging leaders like Akila and her community's ongoing efforts to really transform these lands that were once barren into vibrant ecosystems are really a source of hope for the island. And I really hope that you enjoy learning about these solutions and potential problems for climate change, as well as it's inspiring for you and your own communities. So thank you again for coming. I hope that you enjoy the film as well as the discussion to follow. Oh, God.
Thank you so much, Marie. And so with that, we'll get our show underway. Thank you so much.
I remember the days when our rivers were pure and just full of life, clean water. But now, I see no care for humanity when these acts of insanity are being performed by you dumping toxic waste into our rivers nor seashores. Greenhouse effect for sure will take place. Our environment, please. Protect our environment, I plead.
Forests are being lost at a tremendous rate, estimated at 13 million hectares throughout the world each year. These forests provide the oxygen and water and biodiversity and wildlife habitats and everything else that we need for our survival and welfare.
There's been a cancer of deforestation throughout Trinidad. We're a tiny island, a tiny landmass. And we have witnessed, in fact, some parts of the northern range where entire hillsides have disappeared.
Water is finite. The same water we use today is the same water we had billions of years ago.
You know, all over the world, Asia, Africa, Latin America, that, you know, women's involvement in agriculture can actually...
We do this through educational programming like tonight, trainings and capacity building for congregations, and assisting congregations to plan programs or install projects that bring to life their commitment to care for their watershed. We've worked with over 300 congregations since 2013, helping them teach their members and install projects like tree plantings, rain gardens, and native landscaping that honor our shared Chesapeake Bay watershed. Over the past year, we launched the Partner Congregation Pledge, a dream of our staff and board, to really formalize the commitments that congregations were making to care for their watershed, and to formalize the commitments that IPC, Interfaith Partners, was making to these congregations. We are in this together. We are guardians together. We are excited that over or close to 60 congregations have signed the pledge and made that commitment public. Thank you to all of you who have had those tough conversations to get that pledge signed with your council or your vestry. Thank you to those of you who are building your green team to sustain your commitment. Thank you to the pledge congregations who are planning projects or maintaining existing ones. You set the example of right and just priorities. You are prioritizing watershed stewardship, and the whole watershed community watches and learns. Congratulations for joining this family of deeply committed congregations, and thank you for allowing us to be part of your journey. I also want to say thank you to the foundations that supported our program tonight. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, who is funded in part by the EPA, the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and a whole slew of local cities and counties who are using the stormwater fee that they collect from your stormwater utility fees that we all pay and turning them back into grants like that help IPC with community programming. The City of Salisbury, the City of Gaithersburg, Montgomery County, Baltimore City, Queen Anne's County, Howard County, Harford County. All of those municipalities support IPC's work, and we're very grateful. And Churchville Presbyterian Church in Harford County. Thank you for your sponsorship too. While these grants are helpful, our most important funding comes from individual donors who give generously and enable us to keep this type of programming free. So this month, for Earth Month, we are running a campaign that I need to announce to try to get 10 new monthly donors to sign up with a small $5, $10, or $15 gift every month to make every month Earth Month. So at this point, somebody's going to put in the chat box our donation page. If you'd like to sign up, we have 3 people that have already signed up to be monthly donors. We're just looking for 7 more monthly donors. So thank you. Thank you for being part of our mission. Together, we can restore the Chesapeake and bring healing to our communities. So thank you for spending your Earth Day evening with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Matt.
Thank you so much, Jody. Not just for those words, but for everything that you do for us here at Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. Your leadership definitely sets the tone for the wonderful work that we're doing and all of the work that's possible. So to move on with this evening, I just want to say, I was really touched by that film, and I'm so inspired every time we have one of these events to just look at the Zoom screens and see the diversity of folks that we have here, and in seeing the reservations that came in from all across the watershed. One of the lines that stuck with me from that film was when the woman was planting her garden. She said when her flowers are blossoming, she feels like she's blossoming too. And I totally relate to that as a gardener, but I also relate to that in my professional work here at IPC. Every time that we take a collective look at the work that's going on, it's just a tremendous movement of the faithful, of folks like you that are making the right decisions, that are standing up for our local watersheds. It's really taking root and it's really blossoming, and it's just amazing to be a part of it. So I just thank you all for being here, because this is all part of that blossoming movement. Thank you so much. So now we're going to get started with the speaker portion of our agenda tonight, and it's my pleasure to get us started by introducing Pastor Melinda Harnish Clatterbuck, who will lead us in tonight's opening prayer. Melinda is an organizer and pastor, and also an active community member. She's one of the co-founders of Lancaster Against Pipelines and is a board member of the Pennsylvania Community Rights Network. Her work involves bringing more awareness to the economic and political injustices that surround us. She actively seeks avenues of more equitable change. The values of justice, care, creation, peace, and nonviolent solutions to conflicts are all promoted in the work that she carries out. Recently, Melinda started her own practice as a therapist and spiritual director in Lancaster. And we're honored to have her join us this evening and lead us in an opening prayer. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Melinda. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Greetings and welcome to you all. You've been welcomed a lot tonight already, but I want to welcome the audience, the panelists, those who inspired us through the film, Jody, Matt, Bonnie, Talia, all of you at Interfaith Partners of the Chesapeake working so hard for environmental justice. Greetings of hope and peace to us. I do have a story about working, for years to try to stop a fracked gas pipeline in my community, with my community. Hundreds were involved, dozens of actions, 60 people arrested doing nonviolent civil disobedience. We partnered with a group of courageous Catholic sisters, but tonight I'm going to take a step back and offer a broader perspective. I've been thinking a lot about what moves us, what motivates us, what drives us to make the decisions we make, where to work, what to buy, where to live, big questions like that, but also little ones like what toothpaste to choose, how to dispose of our waste, where do we get our food? And I think I've concluded, it comes down to our belief system, what we believe about who we are and our place in the world and what's important to us. In my observations over the past 50 years, I see that most human beings are living and functioning under a false sense of self in the world. We see humanity as superior to all else that lives, as the species that should have the right to take dominion over all else that lives, to subdue it and use it and inadvertently abuse and exploit it for our purposes. We may not be willing to openly admit this truth in words, but our actions prove that this is the basis of our belief system. And too many times we look to our sacred texts and religious doctrines to support and justify this mindset and behavior. But tonight I suggest we need a new framework. We need a new, more accurate and humble belief system of our place in the world. That is, that we are not separate and superior to nature, but rather we are a part of it and even dependent upon it. In this new belief system, we see ourselves as cohabitating with all else that lives. We see an interdependency, and even that is a little arrogant because, as you heard in the film, right, we could not survive without the gifts of this beautiful planet, Earth, to sustain us, the soil to grow food, the air to give us breath, and clean water to hydrate our bodies. But the Earth could, has, and probably will again survive and perhaps even flourish without the presence of human beings. Chief Seattle, a chief of the Suquamish and the Duwamish tribes in what is now Washington State, was born in the late 1700s and is remembered for his orations stating just these ideas. There are challenges to what he actually said and didn't say, but these words are attributed to him. Teach your children what we have taught our children, that the earth is our mother. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. If men spit upon the ground, they spit upon themselves. This we know, the earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. This we know, all things are connected, like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. We did not weave the web of life, we are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. End quote. We humans are on a cataclysmic trajectory of self-destruction, and we are taking many other species with us. Still, I confess, I am a woman of faith and hope, and I hope you are also people of faith and hope. I believe there is still time for those of us who are willing to embrace this new belief system, which in many ways is really a very old belief system. I believe there is still time to make the necessary changes to move toward that narrow road of inclusion and humility tonight. We've been inspired by the Rastafarian women in the communities of Trinidad and Tobago. We will hear about just a few of the bold and courageous projects in our own communities of the Chesapeake watershed, striving to regenerate the life of the natural world around us. But what we most need as we walk away from tonight's event is to embrace the knowledge that we are a part of this earth, and our choices, our belief systems do indeed matter and make a difference. We have agency and are able to educate ourselves about our choices so that we contribute to the regeneration of our world rather than the destruction of it. And we have agency to redefine the belief systems that guide our choices. I've been asked to offer our prayer for the evening, and please pray with me now as you are able and willing. Holy, gracious God, Goddess, Spirit, Earth Creator, Allah, we have many different names to which we pray. We seek forgiveness for our arrogance and our destruction of this planet, this home, our life. Teach us how to believe in and live out new ways of thinking that acknowledge the reciprocity we share with all that lives. Soften our collective hearts to embrace the living world around us as a part of us, as family that we are responsible to protect and defend and cherish. Strengthen our resolve. Embolden our voices to speak for justice. Encourage our hands to work for justice. And thank you. Thank you for the beauty of life. Thank you for life in and around us. Give us hope, we pray. Amen. So be it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Melinda. That is truly inspirational, and reminds me of, I wish I knew where I read this, but a poem that says, we give praise to the Father above, we give thanks to the Mother below, we care for the garden where the Mother and the Father join as one, which I think sums up a lot of the work that we're trying to talk about, because that garden surrounds us all around. And we have some speakers tonight who are doing their part to care for that garden, and we're super excited to introduce them and have them speak here tonight. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. I know folks, as we get into this, probably have some questions that they would love to ask and have answered. We do have a question and answer period built into this program later in the evening. If you have some questions that you think of while our speakers are presenting, feel free to put those in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout the evening. And so we'll take note of those. And when we get to the question and answer period, we'll do our best to make sure everybody's questions get a chance to be asked. So feel free to use that chat as we're speaking. So now I'd like to introduce the Reverend Diana Carroll. She's our first speaker this evening. Pastor Diana is the rector of St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Eastport, which is a community within Annapolis, Maryland, that has its own distinct history and culture. Bear with me, I want to change pages after. Over the past 8 years, Pastor Diana has guided the process of installing a watershed restoration project and environmental education campus on 4 of the church's 5 acres, which adjoin Back Creek, which is a tributary of the Chesapeake Bay in the Annapolis region. St. Luke's restoration of nature has transformed an overgrown, degraded woodland and wetland into a thriving ecosystem that also provides easily accessible green space to the surrounding communities. Pastor Diana grew up in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and is a cradle Episcopalian with multiple clergy, teachers, lawyers, and environmentalists among her ancestors. She's a founding board member of Annapolis Pride and is married to the Reverend Dr. Sarah Lemming, who is the rector of St. Mary Magdalene Episcopal Church in Silver Spring, Maryland. So I would like to turn over the mic now to Pastor Diana to share some of the work that she's carrying out there at St. Luke.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you to Interfaith Partners for the invitation to share our story with you guys this evening. It's wonderful to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So let's hope this works. There we go. So it really is an honor and a joy to be gathered here this evening. And as Matt shared in the introduction, I'm the rector of St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Eastport, which is a diverse and densely populated peninsula in Annapolis. The peninsula of Eastport lies between Spa Creek and Back Creek, and Eastport was a separate municipality from colonial times right up until annexation in 1951. Our current location at St. Luke's is this long, narrow, partially wooded 5-acre plot that adjoins Back Creek at its tip. The Annapolis area is the land of numerous Algonquin-speaking indigenous peoples, including the Susquehannock, the Nanticoke, and the Piscataway Conoy. And I saw that Bonnie just put into the chat a moment ago a website where you can look up the peoples who are native to the land where you are. As in so much of our country, development by European settlers over the centuries resulted in the decimation of both the native peoples and this native Chesapeake ecosystem. St. Luke's is a small congregation. We have fewer than 100 active members. And yet, by the grace of God and with the help of partners like IPC, we have been able to do some very big things to care for creation and to care for our surrounding communities as well. In 2017 and 2018, we installed the large-scale watershed restoration that Matt was describing, which takes up 4 out of our 5 acres. Basically, everything that is not the church, the old rectory, the parking lot, the labyrinth, and the memorial garden. Everything else is now part of the restoration of nature. What we've done in the restoration is transformed our land into a giant natural filter, which takes 28 acres of polluted urban runoff and runs it through a natural system that allows it to slow down, spread out, and soak in. And at the same time, we've created a more balanced ecosystem. I was so inspired to hear the connections and resonances between our work and the work of Fondaman in Trinidad and Tobago, because it's very similar in the way that we have planted so many native plants, created extensive habitat, and also a welcoming green space for our surrounding community that is an environmental education campus. And that's a crucial part of our ministry and our focus with the restoration. So a little bit about how we got here. The idea for the restoration first emerged actually in 2012 after we had installed the Eastport Memorial Labyrinth on the front of the church grounds. We envisioned the labyrinth as a sanctuary without walls, a sanctuary that would be open to everyone regardless of their faith background. Creating the labyrinth both showed us that though we were small, we could do big things. It gave us confidence. And crucially, it got us thinking about other ways that we could use our land to serve the community. What could we do with this resource of undeveloped green space, which was the largest patch of undeveloped green space on the densely populated peninsula of Eastport? So we thought maybe we could put in some nature trails. But when we tried to take a walk through our woods, there was a problem. They were impassable. They were choked by invasive thorns and vines. And many of the trees had been suffocated by ivy, and they were either dead or in the process of dying. The forest, the woods, was dying. It was not going to survive as a forest. And then, not long after that, Betsy Love, who was the chair of our newly formed environmental committee at the time, discovered this 42-inch storm drain right at the tip of our land, which was expediting hot, dirty runoff from those 28 acres of the surrounding landscape, urban landscape, into Back Creek. Betsy also found mud, sediment, phragmites, those wonderful invasive reeds there. In other words, it was a total mess. But we realized, especially after consulting with some local watershed experts, that we actually had an opportunity here. We as the church had an opportunity to clean up that mess and provide a benefit to our surrounding community and indeed to the entire city of Annapolis. We realized that we could remove those invasive species. We could restore a balanced native ecosystem. And the result, after many years of hard work, lots of grant applications, and a whole lot of resistance from permitting agencies at all levels who do not really understand this kind of project because it's not a Walmart or a housing development. After a lot of work and pushing through many, many barriers, and frankly, by the grace of the Holy Spirit opening doors for us, the result was St. Luke's restoration of nature. This is an overview of the design, and what you can see here is that we now capture as much water as we can, as high in the elevation as possible. So we start all the way up here at Bay Ridge Avenue at the highest elevation, and it goes all the way down to the tidal interface where we meet Back Creek. In the process, it flows through a series of rain gardens, bioswales, a regenerative stream channel, restored wetlands, expanded wetlands, and finally reaches a beautiful living shoreline, which actually goes onto the land of our neighboring community, Watergate Point. Outside that official construction area, we've also restored the rest of the woods, preserving and adding to that vital tree canopy that we heard about in the film. It is really hard to get a sense of the scale of this transformation. So I'm just going to give you a couple before and after pictures to give you some sense of it. This was our front lawn before the restoration. And here it is after, with a rain garden and a bioswale that now wrap around and embrace our labyrinth. This is what the shoreline used to look like. This is what it looks like now. The entire restoration was carefully engineered so that at the end, it would look as though it had been there all along. This work was only possible because of our many partners. And these include, as I've mentioned already, interfaith partners for the Chesapeake, the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay, and Anne Arundel Watershed Stewards Academy. These three organizations joined together to collaborate on the Riverwise Congregations program. And through that Riverwise Congregations program, we received the grant that funded the design and permitting process. We've also now had 8 members of our environmental committee graduate from the Watershed Stewards Academy. And the restoration itself was, in fact, Betsy Love's capstone project for the WSA program. Don't be intimidated, most capstone projects are much smaller scale. She got permission to sort of keep working on it over the years, but graduate on time. For design and construction, we chose the award-winning Underwood and Associates because Keith Underwood focuses not just on stormwater mitigation, but on full ecosystem restorations that become self-sustaining over time. The largest grants for construction came from the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays Trust Fund, administered by Maryland Department of Natural Resources and managed for us by the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. In total, from all sources, we raised close to $2 million to create the restoration and the accompanying environmental education campus. And of course, we're grateful to the many individual donors and volunteers, especially those who have put in the sweat and the energy of removing invasive species and planting natives, which is ongoing work. We dedicated the restoration together with our many partners and supporters formally on September 9th, 2018. We named the stream Bowen's Branch after a local environmental advocate here in Anne Arundel County that some of you would know, Ron Bowen, whose decades of work in adaptive stormwater management and also co-founding the Watershed Stewards Academy really paved the way for the restoration to be possible. Both of our bishops were there for the dedication, and also the mayor of Annapolis and other dignitaries. And some other time, when I have more time, I can tell the story of how we were really going to be outside and then it was pouring rain, but it turned out to be kind of perfect to see it in action. Since then, in 2018 and 2019, we welcomed dozens of tour groups, educational organizations, school children. We engaged in a visiting process. We welcomed and celebrated the arrival of many species of plants and animals who have made the restoration their home. These photos were taken on site, and photo credit for all the gorgeous shots of animals goes to Chuck Gallegos. And we also began to do some dreaming about maybe repurposing or replacing our old rectory to create educational office and meeting space for the church and for our environmental ministry in particular. But like everything else, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic brought a lot of our plans and our dreams to a halt. And so I have been reflecting on the way that this past year has been sort of a fallow time for us. Most of our outward activity has been focused on maintaining the restoration and keeping those invasive species at bay. And appropriately enough, it was in fact the 7th year that our environmental ministry was in existence. And the 7th year is the biblical year for leaving the ground unplanted so that it may rest. At the beginning of 2020, Betsy Love, you can see in this photograph on the left, became Chair Emerita of the Environmental Committee, and 2 new co-chairs stepped into the leadership role. Chuck Gallegos, who takes the wonderful photographs, Ann Arms is part of our vestry. And this year has given us time to kind of pause and reflect and discern more clearly where we're being called to go next. Also in 2020, like so many other faith communities, St. Luke's found ourselves engaging with issues of systemic oppression and injustice, and especially racism, in a new and much more urgent way. We are just beginning to understand how this work is going to touch and transform every aspect of our operations, our ministries, our life together, including our environmental ministry. A dream is now beginning to re-emerge that was really part of our initial vision when we were applying for funding all those years ago. And that is to partner with existing local educational organizations in Eastport to provide targeted environmental literacy programming for the children who live in the nearby public and low-income housing just 2 blocks away. My hope is that over time, these children and their families will come to see the restoration as a place where they are truly welcome and can feel at home, not just during programs and events, but anytime that they wish. I feel like I will know we've succeeded if one day next year I'm walking through the woods and I come across 3 kids from Harbor House or Eastport Terrace who are out there looking at mushrooms and playing with sticks and enjoying the natural world, knowing that it is theirs and they are part of it. So to sum up, when we planted the Eastport Memorial Labyrinth in the middle of what was then our front lawn, we had no idea where this journey was going to lead us. But that vision, that idea of the labyrinth as a sanctuary without walls has now expanded to embrace our entire property. All the land that we steward is a sanctuary. And St. Luke's and the restoration of nature have really become, as our tagline says, an urban sanctuary for the renewal of nature, community, and spirit. Thank you again for the invitation to share this, and I look forward to the Q&A time and some more conversation with the other presenters.
Thank you so much, Pastor Diana. It's truly inspirational and just amazing the work that you've done there at St. Luke, so thank you so much. So our next speaker this evening is Pastor Michael Martin. Pastor Martin serves in the Christian community as a pastor, counselor, and mentor to other pastors. He's known as a personal marriage family counselor and as a retreat speaker as well. Answering the call to pastor, he planted Learning to Live Fellowship in Inglewood, California, and served on the pastoral team of Oceanside Christian Fellowship in El Segundo, California. He currently serves as senior pastor at Stillmeadow Community Fellowship in Baltimore. Pastor Michael has had significant involvement in the work of church health and church diversity, both while serving locally as a resource and nationally in the denominational work with the Evangelical Free Church of America. So Pastor Martin, I'm really excited to hear about all of the wonderful work that's going on that you're leading there at Stillmeadow Community Fellowship. Pastor Michael, if you're talking, you're on mute. Do we have Pastor Michael?
We're not finding Pastor Michael in the chat, Matt.
Did we lose him? We might have lost him. I'll tell you what, how about we'll move on to our next speaker, and then we'll circle back around to Pastor Michael if he comes back. Apologize there. All right, so moving on, we'll come back to Pastor Michael. Hopefully he'll join us here in a little bit. So our next speaker, moving on down the line, is Dr. Joan Plisko. 1 second here, I'm sorry, I gotta move along on my script. So Dr. Pearlstone is the Sustainability Director for the Pearlstone Community, and is also President of Plisko Sustainable Solutions, LLC. As an Environmental Health and Sustainability Director, Strategic Planner, Researcher, Educator, and Gardener, Joan's life's work is based on the premise that people and the environment in which they live, work, play, and pray can become healthier and more resilient with knowledge, assistance, and recognition. Joan spent time working in the nonprofit and environmental counseling worlds prior to launching her woman-owned consultancy. She has participated in Maryland's Climate Leadership Academy, completed the permaculture design course, as well as the Living Systems Leadership Training. So Joan, we'd love to hear what's happening with the Pearlstone community and the work that you're leading.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. I'm so excited to be here to hear that wonderful film and share with you the good work that's happening at Pearlstone. Pearlstone is a center for living Judaism that speaks to the social, spiritual, and ecological needs of our time. And since 2001, Pearlstone has served the Jewish community and beyond, all faiths, all people, with immersive retreats, programs, and events. During non-COVID times, we average about 20,000 visitors a year. And in 2016, just prior to my starting as the Community Sustainability Director, we completed a master plan for the campus that weaves together retreats and events with sustainable agriculture and land stewardship. Next slide, please. Great. So Pearlstone is 180 acres in Reisterstown, Maryland. We're in the Cliffs Branch subwatershed of the Liberty Reservoir, small watershed, and we are honored to steward the lands of the Piscataway and Susquehannock tribes. Just 2 years ago, we earned the National Wildlife Federation Sacred Grounds designation, and we grow and serve farm-to-table organic food. And in fact, during COVID, we pivoted our operations and prepared over 50,000 meals to the community for emergency food response, something we're particularly proud of. Next slide, please. We have a solar hot water heater over our kitchen that reduces our usage of propane by at least a third, and we've had that since 2016. Next slide, please. And last month, we're particularly proud during COVID that we succeeded in installing 10,000 square feet of solar panels across 4 of our building rooftops. These are the lodges where guests and visitors to Pearlstone stay when they're with us. Also, as an agency of the Associated, which is the Jewish Community Fellowship of Baltimore, we facilitate a community sustainability coalition, and we're proud that Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake is a member. And we host an annual environmental advocacy education event. And again, IPC has been a partner with us for that over the past 5 years as well. Next slide, please. Last month, we've had a busy month. We had a prescribed burn of over 15 acres of meadow. And this is to help us manage invasive species, promote habitat to attract wildlife such as bobwhite quails. And our intention is to plant trees such as hickory and chestnut and oak trees to create a savanna that will help reduce erosion and increase water retention. About a third of our property is forested, and we have a tree planting program in progress with the goal of planting an additional 500 trees, and we're about a third of the way there. Next slide, please. We also have a labyrinth. When the Labyrinth Society visited us a couple of years ago, they were kind enough as their service project to construct this in a day. It was an amazing process to witness. And Pearlstone is committed to sustainability and stewardship, and we have a sustainability policy that reflects that. It states that we seek to minimize our impact on the environment. We place value on and promote human health and the health of all beings, and we operate as efficiently and economically as possible. We feel our commitment to stewardship and sustainability reflects a deepening of our overall mission, and we strive to connect people to the land so that they understand and value this connection between people, all beings, and the earth. Next slide, please. So water is integral in our operations. We have a meandering creek on site. We have a lake for boating. We have swimming pools. We have geothermal heating for a portion of our building. We rely on well water for drinking, cooking, and agriculture and sanitation. And we have on-site wastewater treatment. Our imperative for clean water is essential. However, our property is currently experiencing significant sheet runoff and pooling from stormwater flows on various parts of our land. And this runoff is a threat to our agricultural fields, to our roads, and to our infrastructure. Our creek is exhibiting signs of accelerated bank erosion. We are not nearly as far along as we heard from Pastor Diana in their restoration process, but I am going to take you through what we're going to be doing. But we know that in alignment with our sustainability and stewardship value set, we know we have to take action. So before I share our solutions, I also want to share a little bit about the connection of water and Judaism. So the Torah, as many of you may know, in the broadest sense, is God's teaching, the basis for Jewish law and his guidance for life. Many of you also know that water is forever living and also represents great wisdom, knowledge, and guidance. So I'd like to share a reading, Living Waters, the Torah of Water, and acknowledge Rabbi Pesachi Lichtenstein, Pearlstone's Director of Education, for this. Talia, next slide, please. Words of Torah can be compared to water. All who are thirsty, come drink. Just as water goes from one end of the earth to the other, so does Torah go from one end of the earth to the other. Just as water is forever living, as it is written, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, so is Torah forever living. Just as water comes from the heavens, so too does Torah come from the heavens. Just as the water has many voices, so too does Torah have many voices. Just as water restores the soul, so too does Torah. Just as water cleanses the body from impurity, so too does Torah cleanse impurity. Just as water originates in tiny drops and accumulates into mighty streams and rivers, so too the Torah is acquired word by word today and verse by verse tomorrow. Just as water descends drop by drop to form rivers, so too does a person learn Torah a little each day until it is a flowing stream. Just as water is not pleasing to a person who is not thirsty, so too Torah not appreciated unless a person has struggled with it enough to be tired from it. Just as water leaves high places alone and runs in low places, so too Torah leaves alone someone with a haughty attitude and clings to someone with a modest self-image. Just as water is not kept in silver or gold vessels, but the simplest clay vessels, so Torah is sustained by one who sees themselves like a clay vessel. Just as a scholar is not embarrassed to ask a student, "Pass me some water," a scholar is not embarrassed to learn from a student. And just as one who does not know how to float in water will eventually drown, so too will one who cannot float on and point outwards of Torah eventually drown. Just as the face of water reflects a face, so does the heart of a human reflect a person. We must all die. We are like water that is poured out on the ground and cannot be gathered up. The Torah of living water. Again, I thank my colleague, Rabbi Pasachi Lichtenstein. Talia, the next slide, please. So now back to our project. Again, like Pastor Diana, with funding from the Chesapeake Bay Trust for planning and design, and with monies from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources for implementation, we have finalized selection of a company to implement stream restoration, wet meadow construction, and bioretention area construction. Our targeted construction schedule starts this July and should be done in November. And we have certain goals about this project: to reduce nutrient and sediment reductions, provide ecological uplift, resilience, and ease of maintenance. We want to provide more beautiful spaces for our guests to immerse, and of course, educational opportunities for our program participants. Our stream restoration is approximately 1,300 linear feet, and we'll build a naturally sinuous stream designed to promote floodplain access and foster habitat in our riffle pool sequence. Restoration will include self-maintaining dipping pools that can also be used as a mikveh for Jewish ritual bathing. There will be walkways, log bridges, and small gathering areas for outdoor learning. Our pond wet meadow will be about 1 acre and will be located between our agricultural fields and our 3-acre pond. It will serve as a second opportunity for water to infiltrate and purify before reaching the pond. And the wet meadow will provide beauty as it's along the main driveway, and there'll be pedestrian pathways that cross over it. Next slide, please. And then finally, and this was taken before the solar panels were put in, our bioretention areas, which will be in front of the lodge buildings near our retreat center, will be a highly visible project for the 20,000 annual guests that visit. Currently, there are stormwater catch basins in this area, which will continue to be used for overflow, but we'll plant a hardy native plant palette for consistent beauty across the seasons. And we envision this area with our solar panels, our conservation landscaping, our meadow that's growing on the hill to the right, to be an educational focal point for all of our guests. Next slide, please. Just in closing, I wanted to give you a glimpse of why it's so important for Pearlstone, part of the Jewish community, to really honor our land and water. Our faith and our belief in the connection of earth and water to all life forms drives us at Pearlstone to implement and promote ecologically mindful projects. We are grounded in stewardship and sustainability values and our Jewish roots, and we continue to seek ways to intertwine these value sets. I look forward to hosting each and every one of you at Pearlstone for an event, a retreat, an educational session, a walk in the woods. So please do connect with me. And in the film, the last words we heard: cherish Mama Earth, love Mama Earth, save Mama Earth. I wish a happy Earth Day to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And I've had the pleasure of, excuse me, I've had the pleasure of staying at Pearlstone for 2 retreats and conferences. And I have to say, if you get a chance to visit that facility, definitely take that up. It's a wonderful place to visit, and just you can feel the spirit in the air. So I think we saw Pastor Martin come back into the room. Do we have Pastor Martin with us? Taylor, did you see him come in? Pastor Martin, are you there?
I am here.
All right, Pastor Martin, thank you so much for joining us. I apologize for your technical difficulties.
No need for you to apologize. I'm sorry. I had to go to something else. I can be seen okay?
We can see and hear you. I can see and hear you fine. So we'll let Talia rewind. She's got to rewind the slides a little bit and she'll share the screen. So we've got the slides. I can see Talia gave me the thumbs up. I think she's ready to go. So the floor is yours, Pastor Martin.
Thank you. Happy to be here and to see all of the activities that are going on and all of the life-giving words that we've heard this afternoon or this evening. And I'm from Stillmeadow Community Fellowship. Stillmeadow is in the city of Baltimore proper and on Frederick Avenue, just about a mile east of Catonsville. And we're on 10 acres of land, which I arrived there, I don't know, about 4 years ago now. And I say in our first or the second or third slide that stewardship is everything. And that's what we have found out at Stillmeadow. Initially, I thought that stewardship was about our responsibilities to the community, our responsibilities to be more outgoing in the community and interested in their needs. I thought stewardship was about utilizing a wonderful, somewhat historic building and being able to, again, gift it to the community and gift it to God, etc. But I don't know, about a year or so after arriving, I found out that those 10 acres, the 9 acres that the park is in, was more than just woods. You know, it was more than just unattractive trees. And so doing a walkthrough with one of the neighborhood people, I realized several things. One, that there was already some raggedy paths from one end of the park to the other. The second thing, that there were some ravines that signaled that there had been water rushing in various areas that it wasn't rushing in now. Thirdly, that there was really a stream. I'd heard kind of rumors and urban legends about a creek, but there was a stream, and there is a stream. There is a pond, a very nice pond there, and of course, you know, some limited degree of wildlife in it as well. So we really got about the work of deciding that this needed to be something that we would provide not only to our congregation, but to our community. We live in the church is in a kind of a tough section or area, and there's a healthy amount of trauma for kids, for adults, et cetera, for youth. And the idea of a peace park seemed to make so much sense if we could, instead of what had been done before, tried before to develop the land, you know, and put something on it, put concrete on it, et cetera. If we could leave it as it were, and that the only changes would be to bring it back to life, that would be a genuine gift to the community and to the neighborhood, and maybe even to our city. And so we basically set about that process, and not really knowing where to start, you know, we realized that we wanted it to be a peace park. So we named it, you know, and it didn't take a lot of creativity, Stillmeadow Peace Park. After that, we started saying out loud, this is Stillmeadow Peace Park. This is 10 acres of land. And we talked about what was in it and what could be in it. And then a wonderful thing occurred, that we started to have conversations with people, IPC and USDA Forest Service and Blue Water Baltimore, just a litany of organizations and individuals that we started to have relationship with and partnership with. And that really is the key to how over not more than 2 years, really, I'm sorry, 3 years, not more than 3 years, we've been able to move this thing so far forward. It is bringing together people in the general vicinity and people in the city and in the county even that have like-mindedness and want to see rebirth and want to see things be revived and brought back to life. And so we went to school. I'm fond of saying that IPC, particularly Bonnie, just kept whispering and shouting in our ear the different words and thoughts and concepts that we needed to understand if we were going to provide any real net gain and any leadership to Stillmeadow Peace Park. So some of these pictures just indicate the fact that throngs of people over a very condensed period of time descended on our campus at various times to help us make this. So we've cut down something like 70, 80 ash trees. I'm sure most of you know about the challenge with ash trees and the emerald borer. So we cut down a large number of trees. We are positioned, we've been slowly growing, or not slowly, but we've been growing something like 1,500 saplings in our area that'll be planted this late spring. And it'll be planted by, again, this wide range of individuals. If it isn't clear to you, our area is a challenged area in a lot of ways. It's also a mostly African-American community. And we almost never do anything without other things being done at the same time. So in this case, cutting down trees, replanting, seeding with flowers, planting pollinator gardens, working with our honey producing apiary, all of those things are the result of, as I said, not just the people in the community, but the people in the city. And so on any given Saturday in these, over the spring, you will see Baltimore represented. And so relationships are being formed, a sense of mutual respect and well-being are happening. And there is again, an ongoing educational process that so many of us are in. I like to tell the story about our bird guy. We have a bee guy who lives in the area. We have a bird guy who's on fellowship from Johns Hopkins. And to watch him come on campus, catch some birds in the net thing, and then present them to younger kids. But I'm always taken by the preteens and the teenagers who are just blown away and who lose all of their cool and become kids again, right? Watching somebody catch birds and having him explain to them about this English wren or the difference between a female and a male cardinal, et cetera. And watch them drop their guards, and to hear him talk to them about the fact that he caught birds, but he didn't bring birds. The birds are already here. And the challenge is to open your own eyes, to realize how much that is healing, that is refreshing, how much that gives you a sense of wonder is already in your neighborhood, already a part of your environment, but it has to be looked for, it has to be cared for, it has to be invested in. And so that's a big part of what is going on with Stillmeadow Peace Park. And we're also involved, we of course, the Chesapeake, so we're learning and have learned and are taking steps to be good water caretakers, right? And we're in a flood zone. And so there is in 2018, when most people were aware of what happened in Ellicott City, just as traumatic was Frederick Avenue or Frederick Avenue quarter. And 140 or something houses were deeply affected and flooded. And there was a long-term investment in a lot of the people by our church and a couple of other churches. But it also helped to make the point that water is going to go somewhere, and that we're no longer in a 100-year flood rotation, or, rotation is good enough, and that we cycle, and that because of the warming, that things are going to be different, and we just assuredly need to do things that are different. So instead of waiting on the cavalry to come in, our community has kind of taken hold and engaging our city, engaging, our state, in a way of speaking, about what do we do to be able to not just automatically have to move, but to be able to stand in the community, as it were. And so some of the things that we're doing, again, we're trying to mitigate water runoff. So we're planning a break in our very asphalt parking lot. We have, I think you saw already, we have some cisterns that cover about 600 tons, 600 gallons of water runoff from our roof, et cetera. And so we're just trying to put things in place to have a lighter, footprint as a church, and to be a model, and to be an example, and to be an anchor and an education center for the community around us, and again, for our neighborhood and our city. So we're stunned and excited. It catches, I lose my breath thinking about how much has happened in such a short period of time. I am challenged by the need to continue to up our education quotient. We have now been able to work with local schools so that there's some living classroom learning that is slowly beginning, so that our park can be used by the schools for, again, living a classroom outside. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. And feel free to, we're really still in the elementary stages. So feel free to come visit us and bring some flower seeds and some flower bulbs with you when you come. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I don't know about you all, but those three stories definitely left me feeling incredibly inspired, and just thrilled to be a part of all of the wonderful work that's going on. So we've reached the question and answer part of our program. I'm sure that as you all have been listening, you probably have some questions for our speakers. If you have any, I will say we've got about 100 people on the call. So rather than have people come off of mute, if you could raise your hand in the chat. So that's possible if you click on the bottom there, there's a reactions button. If you click on that, you can raise your hand. If you look at my screen, you say, raise my hand, we'll see that. We can call on you. Or feel free to use the chat, and we'll be monitoring the chat and ask any questions. To get things started, though, I'd love to throw out a question to our panels, and feel free, Joan, Pastor Michael, or Pastor Carroll, or Pastor Diana. I'm just kind of curious to know, if a congregation or somebody in the audience here tonight is interested in starting a project similar to yours, or something on a smaller scale, what do you feel like, would be one of the best first steps for them to get started?
Well, the first thing is you asked a group of very humble and people, so you should have called on one of us, because we're all going to be too humble to be the first one. And so I know you have a limited time, so I'm gonna jump in and just say, I think the idea of conversations, right? One of the most powerful things for us is that outsiders didn't bring the idea of a peace park to us, right? They came in, but they came into a vision that we had established. As I listen to the other presentations, I hear maybe a lot of that kind of similar. We talked among ourselves. And sometimes that ends up taking time to take time with people, to walk them through and to sit with them. My congregation thought I was batty, that I was going to change all of them woods, And it took a while for people to get on board. And for the better part of a year, year and a half, it was, they wouldn't say it out loud to me, but it was Pastor Michael's folly, kind of a thing. And now it's not even my park anymore, it's their park, and they thought of it and, all that kind of stuff. So I think the being patient enough to start to have conversations. So.
Yeah, I totally echo that, Pastor Michael, that you've got to start by getting clear about your values and what matters to your community, and your sense of finding those core values that ground you in your faith tradition. And the second piece of that is to look at where you are and what you already have.
Yes.
Look at the land you are on. Almost every faith community has some piece of land that they steward and are responsible for, which means you're in a watershed, your stormwater goes somewhere. You possibly, unless you're in a very urban setting, have, a little bit of green space, maybe a lot of green space like you guys do at Stillmeadow, which means you have opportunities right where you are. You've got a roof. Does it catch sun? Can you install solar panels? Wherever you are, start where you are. Don't try and do exactly what someone else did, but look at your own context and look at your surrounding community, just like you all did at Stillmeadow. What are the needs? Who can you talk to? Who might be interested? We're tiny. We only did what we did because of all the community partners who've been part of it. So I think it's really a matter of those exact two things is get clear on your values, connect it to your faith, and also look at where you already are and start there.
And I would just add and echo the value of partnerships and collaborations, especially with a resource like IPC, like invite somebody from IPC to even be part of the conversation, and maybe take a field trip and go visit some nearby spaces. If we're outdoors, it's COVID still, wear your masks, and just get inspiration from your neighbors, whether it's another house of worship or another campus, but really get inspiration from all around you.
That's great.
It does look like we have somebody with their hand up. Linda, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you very much. Hi, Linda Brogowski from Mosaic Shalom Synagogue in Laurel, which is the traditional homes of the Algonquian and Patuxent tribes. Question, I'm very impressed with all three projects. They're wonderful, and I think we're going to do some field trips. But did you rely strictly on your own congregants to help with the grants writing? Did you look for outside resources to help you identify grants? Was that something that IPC helped you with?
Great question. I'll jump in first this time. We were very blessed to have Betsy Love take the lead. I mentioned her during the presentation for a reason by name, because really she's, without her passion and tenacity, it wouldn't have happened. She wrote a lot of the grants. However, she learned what the right opportunities were and where to direct our efforts by going through the Anne Arundel Watershed Stewards Academy. And that was really where doors opened and there were networking events. We connected with IPC, we connected with the Alliance. And I know we're very blessed in Anne Arundel County to have a program like that, and to have had members willing to put in the time and money to go through and be trained. But I would emphasize that it was definitely a combination of having some really talented, passionate members willing to jump in and take the lead, and having partners who could guide us and who kept guiding us, and then who went to bat for us when the permitters were giving us trouble. And I see Jody's question about challenges. We'll talk about that in a minute. But so it was absolutely a combination. There's no need to rely just on figuring this out yourself. Organizations like IPC know what's out there in terms of grant funding, and they can help guide you.
One of the things that I want to add to that, and IPC is a fabulous resource for that, if you apply to a grant to the Chesapeake Bay Trust, talk to them before you even apply. Start a conversation, build a relationship. It's an iterative process, and you might not get it the first time, and they might give you suggestions on how to revise it. We've had situations where we didn't get funding till the second round. So it's a process, it's a relationship building endeavor. So start now with just a phone call to the Chesapeake Bay Trust and open that line up.
I would echo both comments. IPC, talking to different people, as it were, not being afraid to jump in, right, and ask questions and give it a try. I'll tell you, our experience is the result of having done this now for a while, and we actually have a volunteer group that is our grant writing team. They divide things up. They do a very effective job. They learn the power of, shall I say, of copy and paste. That, you know, there are aspects of this grant experience where you're saying the same things with the calibration, you know, or with an adjustment. And we learn not to be intimidated, so, or by grant writing.
So we just got a message in the chat. It's from Michelle Farmer. She asks, is this work dependent upon volunteers, or does this work offer the opportunity for jobs? This work, should it expand, will create jobs. If it happens, more people will participate, and hopefully we will have opportunities to expand efforts to restore our waterways and our land. So Pastor Michael, do you want to talk about Turnaround Tuesday and what's going to happen there?
Yeah. Our Turnaround Tuesday is a gloriously effective, very noteworthy program that generated up out of BUILD, which is an organizing organization. And Turnaround Tuesday, you know, focuses on returning citizens, underemployed citizens, unemployed citizens, and they do a very comprehensive. And so we are a new site for them. And it appears that we're going to be able to not only do the normal kinds of things that Turnaround Tuesday does, but to literally use Stillmeadow Peace Park as a training station for people who may get the opportunity by learning how to, I was going to say fool around with trees, but I think I mean, you know, cut down trees and use jigsaws and help me somebody to
chainsaws,
saws, right?
Chainsaws.
There you go.
Chainsaws.
Thank you. And etc. And then we're finding that there's going to be work, that there are literally programs within a couple of counties with federal land maintenance and health. And so you know, that's one big thing, and that's the result of us having so much land. That's not always the case, obviously, but even in interacting with the community, and there are opportunities for employment that appear to be coming across our table going forward. And if this last question, are there walking trails? Yes, you can walk up and down Stillmeadow Peace Park. I just saw the question, and do 98% of 1 mile by going all the way down and coming all the way back.
Going back to the jobs question, so I'm on the board of the Baltimore Tree Trust, and there is an effort to train more people in planting trees. So for job creation, and then my understanding is Civic Works, through their Center of Sustainable Careers, has stormwater management training. So I think there are more organizations trying to create jobs in doing this, and then placing people out with the companies that are doing the stormwater installations. And there's also something called Forest Proud that is looking to it's not necessarily like forestry and stormwater, but it's related to the circular economy and making usable products out of materials that are deconstructed. And that's a way to create jobs also.
I know we're short on time. I'd love to address quickly Jody Rose's question about unexpected challenges, because I didn't really have time in my presentation to talk about that, but I think it's important to be aware. We ran into a lot of deep misunderstanding of what we were trying to do both with neighbors. I mentioned the neighboring partners that did work with us. The condo association on the other side of us also has shoreline, which we would have loved to restore. And there was deep mistrust. We were gonna cut down trees. Well, a few trees were lost in the process, but we planted hundreds of trees. And well, we're gonna be able to see the shopping center through you. And we like the wall of green that's there now. Well, the wall of green was ivy. It was choking the trees. We just really ran hard against that. And then more surprising was when we came through the permitting process. And, working with Underwood and Associates, they're cutting edge in this field. They are all about adaptive management. And that means when they get in the field, it is not going to look exactly like it was on the design, because water doesn't always go exactly where you think it's going to go. And the soil doesn't always behave exactly how you think it's going to behave. And we had to adapt. And let me tell you, when you start doing something slightly outside the line of disturbance on your design, perimeters freak out. But more than that, and actually we were a test case for showing the Maryland Department of the Environment why they need a new process specifically for restoration type projects in order to be able to go quickly, to have a quick response team you could go to and say, we need approval of this change. Because Underwood, frankly, just moves forward and does it and then kind of tries to figure it out afterwards, because otherwise they would lose months, and they can't lose months in projects like this. Most frustrating of all has been the city of Annapolis. And I just want to be honest about that. There's some engineers in the Department of Public Works who have never understood why we took a perfectly good functioning stormwater pipe system and did what we did. And, they didn't want to be responsible for maintaining this. And ultimately, they stonewalled us. They slowed us down. We nearly lost our grant funding more than once because of deadlines. We had to extend. We had high up folks from Department of Natural Resources going to bat for us. I will tell you guys, we dedicated the project 2.5 years ago. We have still not been able to close our grading permit with the city of Annapolis. We've closed our permit with the Army Corps of Engineers. We closed our permit with the Maryland Department of Environment. The city of Annapolis, we are still stuck at an impasse. And what they've asked us to do to fix it would actually reverse the ecological progress that we have made. It would put some of it back in pipes. And we're not going to do that. So stay tuned, because I really hope this next round, the next couple of weeks, is going to finally bring us together to a meeting of the minds. Because if it doesn't, we're going to be taking it, public. We're going to be taking it to our representatives. We're going to be screaming and shouting to everyone, because we've waited way too long, and it's hampered our ability to do all of our ministry as a church in the meantime, being stuck in this process. So I needed to put it out there.
Thank you so much.
So just a quick comment. So Pearlstone is in Baltimore County, and my comment on the permitting is, yes, it's hard, and get everything in writing. If somebody gives you an estimate from the county on what the cost of that permit is, and then you go to them 9 months later and now it's 10 times more, there's nothing you can do about it. So make sure everything is really well documented.
Thank you. Thank you all. And I think that really clearly illustrates why it's so important for folks like us to get involved, because doing this type of work is important, but it's also not for the faint of heart. And it takes a really strong foundation. And I think that's what our faiths give us, is that strong foundation and that motivation to persevere and keep going. And while these are restoration projects, what you were talking about there, Pastor Diana, that's advocacy, right? And that's working to restore our local watershed and make it so that we're leading the way and other people can follow us. That's all about the positive ripples that we're trying to make. So with that, I think we'll, I want to thank all of our speakers tonight. Pastor Diana, thank you so much for sharing everything that's going on at St. Luke's. Dr. Plisko, thank you for sharing what's going on at Pearlstone and all the wonderful there. Pastor Michael, it's just amazing what's happening at Stillmeadow, and it's a joy to watch that grow and to participate and help that as it's moving along. So to wrap up this evening, I think Talia has another slide for us here. One, we want to thank you, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank the staff here at IPC for all the hard work that went into putting this together. And I would be especially remiss if I didn't thank Talia Kravitz, who, Taylor, if you can pin Talia, I think we need to and embarrass her a little bit. Talia is an AmeriCorps member with us here at Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake through the Volunteer Maryland program. We've been blessed to have Talia with us this year. She's been an absolute joy to work with. She has been the muscle and the brains behind organizing this evening's event. I think she'll sleep really well tonight. I don't know if she slept well the past couple nights, but we are just super happy to have Talia here. She's been great. She'll be leaving us later this year and heading down to the University of North Carolina, where she'll be pursuing a graduate degree. And we're really excited to see all of the great things that Talia is going to accomplish. So thank you, Talia. Everybody should give Talia a Zoom round of applause. Thank you, Talia. All right, so moving on to the next slide, if you can, Talia. As we mentioned tonight a couple of times, what we're really all about here at IPC, we do a couple of things really well. We're here to support you in your work. We're here to help you accomplish some of the wonderful things that you've seen tonight, but we're really about starting a movement. And I think it's just amazing. All of these orange dots are places where people have come from this evening to join us. And all of those orange dots are making positive ripples in their communities and reaching far and wide. And we're just incredibly excited to have you here tonight and to see this work continue to grow and continue to grow in the years to come. We hope this is the first of many Earth Day celebrations of this type of work. So, it's fun to imagine all of the wonderful work that we're going to be able to accomplish together, all the work that we have accomplished. So thank you to our partner congregations. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to all of our sponsors that made tonight possible. And thank you to all of you for joining us. To wrap up this evening, I would like to introduce another really special person we have on staff with us, Suze Southern, who is a seminary intern who's working here at Interfaith Partners of the Chesapeake this year. She is studying to be ordained in the Episcopal Church at the School of Theology at the University of the South. We're really blessed to have her here. She's been a tremendous resource on staff, and she has drafted our closing prayer for this evening. So Suze, I'll turn it over to you to lead us out this evening.
Thank you so much. And I just first have to say how filled my heart is from seeing all of you here and from hearing from our panelists. It has just done my heart so much good tonight. So I'm very excited to see how this work will continue on. So as we are people of faith, let us come together in joining our voices together in prayer and thanksgiving to our Creator. So I also am joined on the screen by Talia once again. So we will be doing a call and response litany where I will be reading the call, and Talia will go ahead and read the italicized blue sentences, and we would please invite you, even though you're muted, please read along with Talia as she reads the blue italicized sentences. So without further ado, let us pray. In our work together, nearly 90 restoration projects have been completed at 45 congregations. We are called to be in community, to do this work and support each other in love.
We are an interfaith partner for the Chesapeake.
We will engage our own communities and seek connections with others as we build a movement to protect and restore our local waterways. Through these connections, congregations have engaged thousands of volunteers.
We are an interfaith partner for the Chesapeake.
Our Creator's Spirit calls out to us through creation, beckoning us to take action. The actions of our faith communities have planted over 17,000 trees.
We will answer the call of creation.
The service of our faith communities has educated over 14,000 people. Carrying this momentum with us, we will discern our call to action.
We will answer the call of creation.
With IPC's support, congregations have prevented over 30,000 pounds of sediment from entering our waterways each rainfall. We acknowledge the harm we've caused and promise to right our wrongs by continuing to restore our shared watershed.
We are agents of healing.
O divine Spirit, guide us in the ways of justice and truth.
We are agents of healing.
The efforts of our faith communities have resulted in over 4,000 pounds of trash collected. Let us continue to keep our beautiful earth clean. In love and hope, we give thanks for the beauty of the Chesapeake Bay watershed.
We honor our sacred bond.
We give thanks for the blessings of such glory here on earth and being entrusted with the task of being a guardian of creation.
We honor our sacred bond.
We go in peace to do the work we are called to do.
Amen.
Amen, indeed. Thank you so much, Suze, for that. So thank you for everybody for joining us tonight. That concludes our program. As always, there's always more to do. We've got lots that you can get involved with here at IPC. As we've mentioned this evening, our work is made possible by the generous gifts of folks like you. So please check out our Earth Month Every Month campaign. We've also got some opportunities for further engagement coming up. Our Faithful Green Leaders training program will be hosted in June. And if you haven't had a chance to attend that yet, that's a really great opportunity to build a green team at your congregation and start tackling some of the things that we have talked about this evening. So with that, I want to say thank you again for coming and wish you all a very happy Earth Day. And thank you all so much for being here. It's a joy to work with you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mom and Dad. My parents came.
My mom's here too.
My wife was on here at some point.
Does a really great job, everybody. Nice one. Diana, Pastor Michael, Joan, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Melinda, Lee Marie, really inspiring.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone who spoke. That brought the magic to our event tonight. So thank you.
Magic is right. That was fantastic. Everyone.
It was such a wonderful range of kinds of work and locations that you guys selected by having the three of us speak. I really appreciated hearing from the others and where our experiences are similar and where they're different.
Diana, one of the first sermons I gave at IPC was at your church back in 2013 or 2014, was it?
Yeah, it was really early on.
It's really been a journey.
It has been. And I remember it being so inspiring. Jody, this is going to sound crazy, but I think you were one of the first people I'd ever heard. And I've been an environmentalist my whole life. I mean, my grandma started the local organization for recycling before curbside was a thing and was doing organic before it was a thing. But you were one of the first people I'd ever heard connect environmental justice issues so closely with other justice issues around poverty and race. You talked about the Anacostia River and the people who fish in it for subsistence and how polluted it is. And that, duh, but somehow I'd never really made that connection before. And that's been a very powerful motivating factor as we've moved forward, and as you could hear, and where we're, you know, hoping to focus now.
Yeah, it's just incredible what you guys have done though. $2 million in grants. Blows my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
Well,
lot to steward.
I mean, I saw